Hi guys, Tugo here with a new video, and this video we will be talking about Retribution Paladin in 10.2. It's a spec that I always kind of liked. I played multiple times in previous expansions. I even played in whenever it was reworked. I was really playing a lot of Retribution Paladin. Also in 10.1 I did play a bit of Retribution Paladin, but it was very much sporadically because I didn't really play too much on 10.1. I didn't really like the queue times and such. But I think in 10.2 the hype is back, and Retribution Paladin is a choice that you can make to main one in PvP. I think in PvE it can also be outstanding, but in PvP I think it has the luxury of being like very good at everything. It's good in world PvP, it's good in 2v2, it's good in 3v3, it's good in solo shuffle, and it is also extremely good in solo QRPGs. Whenever I tested with the blues, Retribution Paladin was always a menace with their damage, utility. Just the fact that they are just here is really a pain, and it's very hard to deal with one in like that kind of setting. And I wanted to talk about it because I feel like there is not a lot of changes for Retribution Paladin, but I think it's a good thing. It means that it isn't really nerfed to the ground. It kind of needs a lot of like love to the self-healing department, but also healing towards other allies. But I don't know if they're really okay with them being able to heal a lot. I don't think they're like really a hybrid anymore, in my opinion. They're just hybrid by the name, but if you're looking at the meters, like for example healing meters, a arms warrior will heal more than a retribution paladin at the end of the match, or a fury warrior, or a warlock, or a rogue like a sub rogue. And you have many other classes that are actually just are competing with you while they shouldn't really compete with you with healing. But it is what it is. I think it's a fantastic spec. I think it's very reliable. I think it has been streamlined to a T, which makes it very interesting to play around and to have fun with immediately. There are also a lot of like talents that you can choose and go for. You can play different ways in different kind of situations, which is a fun thing. Again, I don't think I have the most meta build. I wanted to test this build on this video, but pretty much we're playing with Crusade. It does more damage for you than Might, but Might gives you a 1 minute CD. So there is the obvious benefit of having that with Vengeful Wrath, because whenever you're like doing a Crusader, Avenging Wrath, you can actually just use Hammer of Wrath at any time. So it will also just be able to have a lot of utility because of Vengeful Wrath and also your Vanguard's momentum. You have a lot of ways to have fun with it. You can change a lot of those points. You can also play with Final Reckoning. Personally, I prefer Execution Sentence because of the 30-second CD. But I just feel like everything works very well on the class tree and the spec tree. The PvP talents, you have some choices, although I do feel like they keep on nerfing things, which makes you in turn not have any choices anymore. But you still have Blessing of Sanctuary, which is a huge win if you're doing like solo shuffle 3s or 2s. You can basically remove stuns, silence, fears, and horror effects on your friendly allies, but also reduce the duration of the future such effects by 60%, which is a huge deal. Also, a 45-second CD is pretty huge. Lawbringer is now useless in my eyes. It's only 2% of their maximum health in holy damage, so that's really a bummer. Aura of Reckoning still gives you somewhat a safe crusade for 9 seconds, which is quite nice, but also the extra damage that you can get from the next weapon swing is also quite nice. Again, I think Aura of Reckoning is very fun to play around and to have fun with it. You also have Searing Glare. If you're using it correctly, you can actually just avoid a lot of damage or a lot of spells. It's annoying to cast, but it's very strong. And then you have also your Blessing of Spell Warding, which again, you don't have to take it if you're playing versus physicals, but often not, casters are actually the worst part for Retribution Paladin, right? And this kind of helps you to actually like deal with that. But you can also play with Judgments of the Pure. You can also have just a straight 2% increased damage and healing for 6 seconds whenever you're like healed by an ally. So it's like permanently up because you're often the target. You have also ultimate retribution, which is fun in BGs, in my opinion. And just in general, you can have a lot of fun with the talents. It just is a bit sad that you don't have extra talents to play with, but that's a problem for many classes, many specs. I'm thinking about mages, I'm thinking about the paladins right now, I'm thinking about maybe DKs, for sure DKs, while other classes like for example Arms Warrior have multiple choices that they can make from PvP talents, which should be baseline for every single spec. But anyways, I'm rambling about it. Overall, it's fun to play. There is a big if or when or what about the 4 set. I don't know if it's really worth to play with 4 set. It kind of forces you to play with expurgation because the 2 set is pretty much that, and casting judgment or divine toll on a target with expurgation causes wrathful sanction, and wrathful sanction is also a 4 set like part, so you kind of have to play with expurgation like for sure, or else the 4 set doesn't exist. But basically grants you Echoes of Wrath, which causing your next Temper's Verdict or Divine Storm to deal damage a second time at 25% effectiveness, which I think it will be in PvP 12%, which is quite sad. It also doesn't consume Judgment, so it does less damage than it should be because of Judgment having like increased damage on Holy Power effects. But anyways, so my question is, should you play with 4 set? There is a world where you're not playing with 4 set and you have like an extra point to spare here, and you can spend it wherever you want, whenever you need. Personally, I don't know. For now, I'm playing like that, but there is certainly a argument where you can actually put that extra point into extra haste, or if you want to have like an extra 3 seconds on your crusade, or you want to have like for example. Whenever you're using your Blaze of Justice, that it causes a consecration on the area, so you can actually just play with something very interesting, which is Hallowed Ground, which is quite nice versus Frost Decays and Unholy Decays in general, because it just removes chains of ice, so it is a counter, but nobody's really thinking about that. But you can play around that, or you can increase your Crusade Strike or auto attack damage by 10%. It also increases the critical strike damage by 10%. But it is what it is. For now, I have the 4 set, so I'm going to play with that. And I'm going to show you a bit the damage that you can produce as a Retribution Paladin, pretty much. But you can have a lot of fun for sure. And you see, like right now, I'm not bursting. I'm already doing a lot of damage, like 90k DPS. Of course, it's the start. Then I can do execution sentence, and I can just like destroy people, right? And yeah, it's interesting for sure how much damage you can do as a Retribution Paladin, and it's really fast how you can do that. I'm not really doing the most optimal way of doing damage as well. I'm trying to proc with, I'm trying to use the 4 set as much as I can to actually have a lot of damage like extra. But in general, you don't have to. I think if you really want to play with just normal set instead of like the 4 set, it's acceptable. I think it's really also a fair alternative, and in general you're going to do a lot of damage as a Retribution Paladin regardless for 4 set or not, so you can actually have an extra point. And you see my Final Verdict crits for 204k, Judgment crits for 130k, Execution Sentence did 539k. I think it will be a bit lower in PvP anyways, but it's a lot. Even by like divide by 2, it's still like increased damage, like regardless, it's very big. You have Wake of Ashes critting for 166k. You have Hammer of Wrath that you can cast for a safe 120k. It will always crit. Crusading Strikes does alright damage. It's just replaced a melee strike, so it doesn't do that much damage as well, but it's still there. Wrathful Sanction actually deals some okay damage. It's 67k crit. Now I don't know if it's worth it. I guess if you're bursting, you have your Wrathful Sanction popped, and you proc your Final Verdicts, which in turns will have multiple of mini Final Verdicts actually hitting the target. It can add up more damage, so I think 4 set will be the play, although I think you can probably have better stats and also maybe more damage on other parts of your kit without a foresight, but that depends really on how you want to play. Blade of Justice does some okay damage. Divine Storm, which is the proc from Judgment that you get from your talents like Empyrean Legacy, did alright damage. Wait, I need to go back to my damage so I can show you guys again the damage that I did. So it did 120k crit, which is acceptable. Divine Arbiter, of course, 137k. It's also a good thing to have. Expurgation, which is the dot. Again, like I said, the talent itself is not really worth to pick. It's only 3% extra increased damage, but it does add up with the Wrathful Sanction and the increased damage from Final Verdict or Divine Storm from the foreset. I don't know if it's really worth it. I will have to test both, but right now I feel like it's worth it from just the point of view of having Wrathful Sanction doing 5% of my damage, plus also Final Verdict doing increased damage, even by a little, by 10%, because you can see it as a 10% increase because it hits like for 20k whenever you're doing 20 like a 200k Final Verdict. It's there, right? But you have to see if it's worth the stat loss, especially since a lot of stats are actually crit, which is not the best thing to have. For example, your legs gives you crit first. You have haste mastery on your hands, haste mastery on your helm, which is good. But you have also your shoulders giving you crit haste, which is not that good. And you have haste versatility at your chest. Depending if you want to run haste or mastery, you can see it as a loss. But overall, I think you can have a lot of fun by playing Retribution Paladin. I think overall, it's really strong. It does a lot of damage. It has a lot of comps that you can play in too. So you can play double DPS. It's also very fun and very active for sure. You can also play trees with Cupid. You can play with a warrior. You can play with a caster, like for example Demonology, Warlock. You have some comps. It's not really the most versatile spec comp wise in trees, but what you have is the versatility of having like the best gameplay, I would say, towards every single sort of PvP. So world PvP, like I said, 2v2, 3v, SOLOQ, RPGs and solo shuffle, which again, if you're like looking for a spec where you can have the most fun and the most carry potential and the most impact, I think Retribution Paladin is one of them. And the other day someone asked me like Retribution Paladin, Havoc or Arms Warrior, if you want to play solo shuffle or solo QRPGs, which one is going to be the better one? I would say Retribution Paladin, for example, because you will have impact as solo shuffle and you will have impact in solo QRPGs. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to play the specs that you love playing on World of Warcraft. You don't want to play it just purely for strength, because that would result to a disappointment if it gets nerfed down the line, or if it gets a buff, then it's good, but you can always expect a nerf, and having a buff is something that you could not really expect, but have it and be really happy about it, of course. But right now, the good thing is about Retribution Paladin, it is a reworked spec. It does feel like it. It does feel like it plays the next expansion kinda, and not really Dragonflight, and where you have other specs that are still playing Shadowlands, like for example BM Hunter. So I would arguably say MM Hunter without double tap. Those specs are playing Shadowlands. And you as Retribution Paladin, you are actually in the future. You're not playing Dragonflight, you're playing the next 11.0 like expansion. And that feels how you are playing currently in the game. And some specs are still playing in Dragonflight expansion, and some specs are like looking into a new rework and getting like a feel of a Retribution Paladin rework. But that we will have to see down the line. For example, the rogue specs are like fantastic. I do feel like they're playing way better than what they played in Dragonflight and also Shadowlands. But as you have some specs like for example Frost DKs, where if you took that spec and you play in BFA, you play in Shadowlands, you play in Dragonflight, you don't feel like there is any difference, and that does feel with the gameplay. But it is what it is, right? But at the end of the day, would I recommend playing Retribution Paladin? I would definitely recommend Retribution Paladin. For a side note, I want to show you guys the appearances of this season of this season. So you have the elite set, which is red, looks quite cool, and then you have your glad set, which is white, which I feel like it's very cheap, but whatever. You have your normal set, which is the one that I'm wearing right now. You have the Rate Finder set, which is blue, which is looking quite nice. Maybe you could go for Rate Finder if you want to get like a good looking set. You can have the Heroic one, which is green. Very fitting for the Emerald Dream. And then you have the Mythic one, which is the purple one, which is more voidy, but it is what it is. I kind of miss like a bright yellow. This is like only orange, unfortunately. But I would have liked like a bright yellow one. Like a yellow banana would have been very nice, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, I think Retribution Paladin is set to be one of the better specs. But if you want to check out my solo shuffle prediction tier list video, you can check on one of these videos that are popping on your screen. If you want to check out the latest video about my predictions for BlizzCon, you can check also one of those videos. And we will probably catch each other in the next video. Have a good day. Bye.